if community could see that we're people and that a lot of times we just need to be showed that we can live differently. My name is Mitchell, Mitchell Pearson, and I'm 31 years old. I'm a minister now. Started my own business last year. I come from a pretty good home, a single mom home. My mom was, my dad struggled with drinking. My mom told him it was her to drinking, and he chose to drinking. So she came home and to live with with her parents for a little while. We grew up in a little bit of a rough neighborhood. She went to school to better herself, and like I said, she started doing a lot better. I got in a lot of trouble in school. I was real small for a long time, so I learned how to fight, and from there, I felt like I always had something to prove. Victim of sexual abuse. I struggled with that for a long time when I was little, up until recently, I imagine. And growing up, I was always had something to prove, you know. And like I said, as far as household-wise, I grew up in a church. My mom, she was a good mom, did the best she could with what she had, and she never showed me how to do wrong things, never showed me that doing the wrong thing was right. It was always what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. I kind of developed how to cope and moving around and things, and developing how to prove myself to other people. So kind of what led me into wrong places.
How or under what circumstances did you begin using, and what was your drug of choice?
I first used when I was 12 years old, I think. Yeah, I was 12 years old first time I smoked marijuana. First time I did my drug of choice, I was 14 years old. My drug of choice was crystal meth, and kind of came upon, I guess, naturally. Somebody had it and was like, "Hey, look, you ever tried this?" And I was like, "No, I'll try it." I remember, oddly enough, the day after I used crystal meth, I remember my jaw hurt and my whole body every muscle in my body hurt from being tensed up for about 12 hours straight. And I was like, man, I'm never gonna do that again. That seems like a huge waste of money. And that was not the truth. That I ended up using sporadically here and there. By the age of 17, I was using every day. And I stopped for a little while. I changed over to other things. Drinking was more socially acceptable than smoking crystal meth. And by the time I got into my early 20s, I was back to using every day. And until it became impossible to use. So.
Why do you believe people with a substance use disorder keep using drugs?
Because it fixes a problem. I believe that people use because it fixes a problem. There was a time that, like in that little gap period between 17 and 20, I multiple times I tried to commit suicide. And so rather than, there was a rationale part of my brain that said, hey, look, using drugs is better than trying to kill yourself. Not really understanding that using drugs was slowly killing myself. And cause that's part of what I think the biggest lie you can tell people is that drugs don't work. Because drugs do work for a time until they end up, the problem would get so big that it can no longer patch even that problem. The biggest problem is we're trying to cover something up and not addressing that issue. And by not addressing it, that problem just gets continuously bigger until not even drugs can mask it.
When did you know that you had to stop using?
I had gathered so many felonies and been arrested so many times that I knew that I had no choice but to quit using for a period of time long enough to get out of trouble. And I was referred to the program here at Pickens Behavioral Health so I could get out of jail. And so I would check that box, say whatever I had to do to get out of jail. And I got out, and I used one more time. And I remember thinking that I knew I had a drug test the next day. And for some reason, I still got high the day before. And I realized that maybe there might be an issue with my drug use. Maybe it's not as voluntary as I thought, because that was just insane to use the day before a drug test. And I felt like I could stay clean long enough to get out of trouble. Was really the big part of, hey, maybe I need to stop using.
What would you like the community to know about substance use disorders?
I would like the community to know that we're people. You know, that a lot of times when people ask us, why can't you quit using, the biggest answer is, I don't know. All we know is this is what's worked and kept us alive this far, and people are asking us to give up the one thing that made us feel human, that made us feel free, that one thing that gave us a little bit of good in our life. And a big part of the addiction and that substance use disorder blocks out the part that part of where we can see all the things that we're losing by continuing to lose, and all we hold on to is like, well, this is the one good thing that I have. If community could see that we're people, and that a lot of times we just need to be showed that we can live differently, because most people that I've run into, including myself, don't know that they can live differently. They think that there was a time in my life where I thought my sole purpose was to serve as an example to others on how not to live. Like that was what I was here for. And so, and there's a lot of people that think like that. And that's a lie. It's a lie. And be patient with us. Because sometimes it happens overnight. Sometimes it happens with one and done, but sometimes it don't. And that's what I'd like the community to know, that we're people.
What would you like others who are struggling with a substance use disorder to know about seeking treatment and or recovery?
That they're not alone. People are never alone when they're looking for recovery or seeking help, because one of the biggest lies that our disorder tells us is, look, you're all by yourself. Nobody's ever going to understand. The whole world's against you. Nobody wants to see you get clean. They just wish you die. All those things. And I want people that are seeking help to know that they're not alone. That there are other people that are struggling just like them. There are other people that have gotten clean, coming out of situations just like them. And there are people that understand the situation that they're in, and that are not there trying to hurt them, but trying to help them. Because that's one of the biggest problems that I've seen, even in my own life, is that when we get this us versus them mentality, it blocks us off from the people that are trying to help us. And it makes us isolate ourselves and puts us living in a completely different reality where we're surrounded by people that everybody does drugs, or that everybody lives the way we live. There was a time that in my using that I was convinced that everybody smoked crystal meth. Like it was the only truth that there was. And whether they lied about it or not, there was a time that there was something that they did that was similar to me. And when the case was, not everybody was living the way that I was living. That there was a better way of life, and that, you know, we don't have to live on the underside of the world all the time. That's not what we were created for.
For you personally, what has been the most challenging aspects in trying to remain substance free?
Most challenging aspect at first was leaving everything behind, everything that I'd ever known, because that was what I found comfort in. What I found acceptance in was living in that lifestyle of drug use and drug addiction, and the people in that world. I found acceptance there, and it felt good to be accepted for who I thought I was. And leaving all of that behind, now staying clean, the hardest part would be dealing with people that don't understand, and dealing with that frustration that just because I got clean doesn't mean that the whole world is going to change their perception of who I am. Just because I've changed who I am doesn't mean everybody's going to realize that I've changed. And realizing that and understanding that's a daily thing. There's still times when I come across people that when I tell them who I am and then they look up who I was, and the look that they give me, I have to laugh it off, because if not, it would irritate me to no end. And I could see that being a struggle in early recovery. Well, what's the point of staying clean? Today, I have other things that I value more than how people look at me, and so I get to look at the blessings that recovery has given me and be like, that's why I'm staying clean, so that I can hold on to the blessings that recovery has given me, because the life that I have today, on a bad day, is still better than the best day that I had when I was using. So
this next question is 2 parts. How have people helped you along the way, and how have well-meaning people hindered you in your progress?
The people that have helped me along the way, I really look at as a godsend, and looking at it as a miracle in slow motion, just good old God's providence, because I get to look at the people that God put in my recovery path, such as the peer support counselors and things like that God put in my life, and people in recovery that God put in my life that I could look at and look to and attach myself to, because I could see myself in them, where they weren't so self-righteous that I didn't know that they had never used before. And they helped me by showing me how to live. They helped me by showing that I could have fun without using, that I didn't need to get high to be able to have a good time. And that was one of the biggest things, as far as that my life wasn't over just because I had to stop using drugs, that my life was actually just beginning, and that I could actually have a good time that wasn't dependent on substance that I was putting in my body. And learning that, because like I said, one of the biggest hurdles is like, well, if I can't get high no more, what am I going to do? You know, and learning that God put those people in my life that showed me how to have a good time, showed me how to have a responsible time, and at the same time be able to laugh and cut up, and that there was a time for everything. Well-meaning people that probably tried to help me and probably didn't do a whole lot. That's a tough one, because there's some well-meaning people and well-meaning programs, I think, that try to help people, but they don't know how, and so they tend to lock people away in a box and give them no resources on which to help themselves, but just expect that time's going to heal all wounds. I think that's one of the biggest problems, is that people think that time heals all wounds, and that's not the truth. There has to be something to change what's happening on the inside to be able to change how we live on the outside. And some people think, well, just give it a year or two and you'll be fine, and that's not the case. I think that that's the mindset of most of the well-meaning people that try to help. Is like, well, just stay clean a year or two, or we'll restrict you for a certain period of time, and then all of the problems will go away. And that, I believe that they're well-meaning because they want to see that person get better and they want to see that person live a successful life, but they don't have the resources or the knowledge available to them to be able to know how to actually help. And really the biggest problem that we need to learn is, what I needed to learn was learning how to live a new life, and a different way of life.
How did your life look on the outside versus how it looked on the inside when you were struggling the most?
What's amazing is that on the inside, there was a period of time, I guess, before my drug use got really bad, that when I looked at myself from the outside, I looked fairly successful. I had a job I held down 40 to 50 hours a week. I was living on my own. I was paying my own bills, doing my thing, supporting the household. And things slowly started to degrade. And while I may have kept a job, on the inside, there were times that I would sit on the edge of my bed and harm myself. And like I said, that was part of the time that when I came to said, hey, maybe I can use more. My using became more and more and more because it was either getting high or sitting on the edge of a bed hurting myself. I thought that I was okay because I wasn't trying to kill myself anymore. I was just harming myself. And I figured that drug use was better than harming myself. But on the outside, it looked all right because, like I said, I was working 40 hours a week. I was maintaining relationships in my house until things slowly started to degrade to where drug use took over my life. And honestly, I can't even tell you when that point was. I know that when I lost my job because I'd stayed up all night using and running the streets, and the next day I didn't feel like going to work. I just didn't feel like going. I'd been to work 100 times after staying out all night, but then one day I was like, you know what? I don't feel like going to work today. And drug use immediately filled those 8 to 10 hours a day that I was at work. And things went downhill fast after that.
What strategies do you use every day to refrain from returning to use?
Today, using's not an option. And today, I look at my life, and what's one of the things I was taught in recovery was that using's not an option. I'm able to go out and use. I still have the skill set to be able to go to any place I want to and find drugs. I tell people all the time, I don't even got to speak the same language as people to be able to look around and figure out who's using and then team up with those people. But today, staying clean, that's the biggest part. Is I tell myself that using's not an option. That there has to be another way, because the lie that I told myself for the longest time was that using was the only option, and that using was the only reason that I could stay alive, or using was the only reason that I could feel like a person. But today I let myself that not even be an option. That there must be another way that I could feel fulfilled, that I could feel accepted, and that I could feel gratitude in my life, to be able to find something to be grateful for in my life.
If you're involved in a recovery support group, what is it and how does it help you?
Today, I'm not as involved in NA as I was when I got clean. But NA played a huge part in me getting clean and giving me the tools that I needed to be able to live a life worth living. And like I said, that fellowship of people to be able to teach me that my life wasn't over just because I was getting clean. I still apply those principles that they taught me in my life. NA actually repaired my life, my relationship with God, and allowed me to be able to be a minister today. And so a lot of my recovery program is being a minister, helping other people, seeing the problem and how bad addiction still is and substance use disorders still are. Helping those people on a day-to-day basis and let me know that it ain't changed. It ain't got better out there. And dealing with God and staying in contact with God and keeping my spiritual relationship in good standing. May not be in good standing every day, but I do know that where my help comes from. And so I always know where to turn.
What was the hardest part about stopping? And was there a time when you wanted to quit, but either couldn't or just didn't know how?
The hardest part about stopping was stopping. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, and staying stopped. Because there have been plenty of times in my life where I'd put it down to prove that I could put it down. But I would either pick something else back up or I'd pick it up I'd already have my eyeball set on a date to when I could pick it back up. Whether subconsciously or consciously, I'd be like, well, in 2-3 weeks, I'll go ahead and get high again. You know, once I showed myself I can stay clean for that long. And so the hardest part for me was staying stopped and realizing that I didn't have to use. There was times when I tried to stop and I couldn't figure out why I'd keep using. I would say it was my own idea. I'm like, well, you know, I'm all right. I talked myself into saying that things were okay in my life. that I deserved to be able to use, or that this was the only person that I was hurting was me, or why was everybody concerned about my drug use. I would just kind of explain away and I'd rationalize my drug use. And the biggest part is I would lie to myself and make it think it was my own idea as far as like that I was okay. When I was lying to myself was that I wasn't okay. And the reason that I used was because I was not okay. And struggling through that, I think that was probably one of the biggest realizations. When I got arrested the last time and I got out the last time and I was coming to the IOP and I knew I had the drug test the next day. I remember laying in bed and I was like, man, something's not right. You know, no normal person gets high the day before a drug test. I'm like, I should be able, if I had control over this, I should know that when my drug test is coming up, and I should be able to stop using before that drug test, just to pass that drug test and then go on about my business. I said, something is wrong, because nobody in my situation would use right now.
For someone who loves someone with a substance use disorder, what should they do to help them?
That's a $1 million question. I think people that love people who have a substance use disorder should be there for them, but not enable them. I think we get confused and we think that being there for them is enabling them. But if we isolate them and push them out on an island somewhere and tell them that when they get better, they can come back into our family or be one of our loved ones again, we're not helping the issue. We're doing the exact opposite of the issue, or doing the exact opposite of helping. And finding that line of where we're there for them and showing them that we love them and showing them that we care for them, and being there to support them while not enabling them to use, is a tough spot that I think everybody, even in our current climate, is looking for, as far as most recovery circles. What I've seen with harm reduction and things like that, I've been battling with that, because is that enabling, or is it just being there and letting them know that we love them? Because that's the amazing part, and that's the hardest part, I think, is trying to figure out where God wants us to use us, because I believe there's a lot of different angles to that, and it's a multifaceted question as far as there's a lot of things that we can do to help, but there's some people that are called to be there to stand right beside them and let them know that even though that they're using, that we still love them, and that we're not going to leave them and we're not going to abandon them, and to do so while also encouraging them to have a change in their life, that they're sitting all that there is to their life. I think that the trust we develop with that person while they're using, they have to trust us to be able to believe us when we say, hey, look, you're worth more than this. And however that ministry or outreach, or whatever we want to call it, gets handled, I think if you want to help somebody that's struggling with substance disorder, get them to trust you. Treat them in a way that allows them to be able to trust you. And then use that relationship to show them a better way of life and show them the value of their life.
How is your life different now?
My life is different today, because I can have a relationship with God today, and then I'm grateful for who I am today. I don't hate who I am today. I don't look in the mirror and scowl at the person in the mirror in disdain for who I am. And there was a time that I did that. There was a time that I looked myself in the mirror and tell myself exactly what I thought about myself, and then it wasn't none of it good. There's still days like that. There's still days when I look myself in the mirror, I'm like, man, this is just pointless. But today, I get to see the value of my life. It's not in what I'm doing, but who I was created to be. And that there were certain things that was put inside of me that gives me value, and not what I do, and not what I have, and it's not based on anything transactional with people. That there are people that love me today, not based on what I can do for them. There was a time in my life that was not so, and I can see that, because I used to think anybody that had a relationship with me had an angle, and they were trying to get at me for some reason, or they had something that they were trying to take advantage. But today, I walk into probably more relationships than I should with a trusting attitude. As far as like, hey, look, this person needs help, or this person, let's build a relationship with this person. I go into places seeking to build relationships instead of seeking to isolate myself. And that's something huge for somebody like me. I used to pull myself away from the group, and it took a while because I had a lot of social anxiety about dealing with people. And I noticed that when I would use, I would be social. And it took a while, but God showed me that I was social to begin with. I was designed to be social. It was just the problems that I was dealing with on the inside of me was causing me to be antisocial. And so today, there are still times when I feel nervous about being in public situations, but a lot of times, more often than not, I can move into those social situations and talk to people without fear of what they see in me, or if they're going to see past the wall that I put up, because I've become a lot more open with people. I mean, that's one of the biggest things with that, and gratitude, and all the gifts that God's given me throughout recovery. I'm married today. I'm faithful in my relationship with my wife today. It's the first relationship I've ever been faithful in my whole life. Since I was in the first grade and I kissed one girl on the playground, and then with next period I would kiss another girl on the playground. And but our marriage is the one relationship that I hadn't went outside of. My kids value who I am today, and they want to spend time with me. I come home and they're happy I'm home, you know, and they don't have to be scared of when I'm leaving or wondering what's going to happen to them. I get to show them the best way I know how to be a good man and a good father. And that's a blessing I never thought I'd have.
You've answered all our questions, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
I know that getting clean is one of those things that there's a million reasons to get clean. And whether it be for my kids, or for a legal situation, or save a marriage. But I was taught that recovery was a selfish thing. And I was glad that I was taught that, because selfish was one thing that I understood. And I had to get clean for me, because all the other stuff would have bad days. All that other stuff might not matter to me one day. But when I came to value myself and said, hey, look, I gotta stay clean for me, then all those other things kind of fell into place. And I had people here that said, hey, look, I don't know that if staying clean is gonna fix all your problems, but just stay clean and let God handle the rest. And give him the opportunity to be able to work something in your life and see where that goes. And there was times where I kept people working late, and I was gritting my teeth, and I was crying and snotting everywhere, and those people was like, just hold on. And I'm extremely grateful for those people, and unimaginably indebted to those people. Because of the amount of love that they had for me, and for me to be able to trust them. That they had already established that trust, and I trusted them when they said it. And that was probably one of the most important things for me as far as staying clean. And it's important that we don't give up. And when everything's lost, that I remember that I'm never alone, and that I'm not left, and that I'm not forsaken, and that I'm valuable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.